Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's a moment of intense fear that you will never forget? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was home alone and looked into my infant son's baby monitor as he slept in his room, only to see an adult body leaning down into his crib, ran screaming into his room to find him sound asleep and no one there. Turns out the monitor glitched and froze on the image of me putting him down earlier. Sneaking into a neighbor's yard as a kid in an attempt to retrieve a volleyball that went over the fence, and coming face to face with the biggest, meanest looking dog I'd ever seen in my life. He was jet black and taller than me, even standing on all fours, and even more so when he reared onto his hind legs to try and peek over the fence. From my little 8-year-old kid POV, that dog seemed like the size of a horse or something. Fortunately, he was friendly, and so was the owner. She helped me get the ball back and called off the dog, who was just curious and eager to play. Still, as a little kid, unexpectedly coming face to face with a full-sized Great Dane, it was enough to make me pee a little from sheer fright. When I was about 7 or 8, me and my friends were hanging out at the park. We were all sharing like hard-boiled sweets of some kind, and one of the boys ran out to the road just as a car came. I went, "Huh!" and sucked the sweet down my whole throat. I couldn't breathe. I literally had the "I'm going to die" thought. I ran home, which luckily was very, very close by, burst in, and mimed with my face turning purple that I was choking. My father gave me the Heimlich maneuver, and it dislodged it somewhat, and I could breathe again. I think it actually didn't come up, but gave me room for it to go down somehow. Anyway, 36 now, glad to be alive. When I was a kid, one night I was laying awake in bed late at night. My bedroom was above the kitchen, so I could hear everything going on in the kitchen. Both my parents were asleep, and I'm an only child, so nobody else was awake in the house. Suddenly, I hear what sounded like a child shouting, "Hello!" in the kitchen. I froze in bed and was absolutely terrified. It went on for a few minutes and stopped. I think I just lay there for the rest of the night. In the morning, it turned out this cat, which was kind of brain damaged or something from across the road, had got in, and we'd noticed before it would sometimes yowl in the garden and make a sound that sounded exactly like a child shouting "hello." Made sense, as we had our own cats, and this cat flap cat door was through the back door, which led directly into the kitchen. Scared the shit out of me at the time, though, as I was convinced the house was haunted. 2 men broke into my house when I was home alone. I thought it was my stepdad, home for lunch, so I didn't think much of all the noise. He would often come home and take care of his massive saltwater aquariums. Then my cat started freaking out, so I exited my room and saw them in the hallway about to come to my room next. They fled. The police said they were probably young drug addicts looking for an easy hit with no one home, which is why they didn't escalate to violence. They did steal a bunch of my mom's pills. Unfortunately for them, they were all hormone replacements as she was going through menopause. That was nearly 20 years ago, and I still have PTSD. I never truly feel safe at home, especially when I'm alone. First time working on a miter saw, and my boss had me cutting 1x2 boards 4 at a time into 5-inch pieces. They were those cheap 1x2s full of knots and pitch pockets, and somebody probably already knows where this is going. I'd gotten maybe half the bundle done. Just kind of halfway zoned out, doing my thing, when all of a sudden there was a loud bang and shit just scattered everywhere. Clouds of dust and pieces raining down, making it almost look like the board exploded. My left hand, the hand holding the stacked 1x2s, which I cut them, was numb, and my first thought was, oh god, I just lost my fingers. I didn't. My hand took a good thump and went numb was all. I'm still not really sure what happened, if the blade got bound up somehow, or maybe a knot exploded instead of cutting, but I will never forget that moment of staring at my left hand, fully expecting to see a bleeding stump, or several. I was around 15 or 16 when this happened. Me and my girlfriend at the time were riding our bikes home from school. We were 20 minutes away and the sky behind us was getting darker and darker. We kept going in the hope that we would make it home in time. The air felt suddenly cold, which was unusual. Once we reached her house, I looked up to see a huge funnel cloud hanging over. We went inside in panic and went into the basement, ditching the bikes on the grass. When we watched the news after the storm passed, it turned out the funnel cloud formed into an EF1 and touched down 4 miles away from here. It hit a small field with no houses around, but only some damaged crops. I have a fear of storms now, but I live somewhere that rarely gets them in the first place, so I don't have too much to worry about. Driving home on a remote and snowy mountain road, my wife and I went up around a 90-degree downhill turn just a little bit too fast and started fishtailing. Spun all the way around 180 degrees and struck the little embankment of snow that was piled up on the side of the road from it having been plowed earlier. It was still actively snowing at this time. There was no guardrail. We tipped up on 2 wheels, nearly tumbled down the entire 100-plus foot ravine below to what would have been certain death, and then plopped back down safely to a halt on all 4 wheels. I remember during the moment, we started spinning around while still trying to correct it. I looked over and made eye contact with my wife. We shared a brief but somewhat slow-motion moment of grim, unspoken acknowledgement, like, well, it's been fun, before striking the embankment and recovering. We obviously made it down off the mountain safely, but I'm not sure I'll ever forget that moment. I'm not going to make any assumptions because, it's all good, but in inclement weather, barring a medical emergency or if you're intoxicated, why weren't you driving? I'm not saying that your wife isn't a good driver. Please don't make this a guy-girl thing. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a little more traditional with, I don't know. Anyway, glad you guys made it okay. I've been in some dicey situations where I could have probably died, but for some reason the most terrified I can remember being, to the point where I literally almost pooped myself, is when I thought I had mistakenly cost my employer $2.3 million. I hadn't been following a campaign as much as I should have, and I had a feeling something was off, but seeing that number just sent a terrible rush of emotion through me, as I thought I'd be going to prison for fraud or something. Literally, my butt shuddered, and I almost lost it. I paused, shut the door to the office, and was just completely shaking. I ran the numbers again, same number, went to the bathroom and threw up. Consider just walking out and never coming back. After about an hour, I went to my boss, and she lost her collective shit. We went back to my document, and it took about 10 minutes of her panicking to realize no one told me I was supposed to pull campaign spend from another system. Turns out the numbers were fine. I took the next day off. When I was a teenager, I used to go night wandering. I could climb out my bedroom window in the middle of the night and go for a walk. It was a weird compulsion, vaguely suicidal, because my intent was to just keep walking until I got lost with an expectation that I might succumb to hypothermia or something. I would walk away from the suburbs and into the countryside, but I always, or usually, turned back after an hour or two and climbed in through my window and went back to bed again. One time I had walked far enough that I was on an unlit gravel road, and I decided to cross a paddock that had some trees, but once I got amongst them, I was struck with an incredibly powerful sense of being watched. A kind of predator sense, despite being able to see well enough in the dark to know I was alone. The feeling became so overwhelming that I felt like all I could do was lie down and play dead. After a while, the feeling passed and I could get up and walk again. I ended up sitting in some bushes for the rest of the night and heading back home once the sun came up, which got me in a lot of trouble, of course. I cannot explain what triggered that sense of terror, but I have never felt anything like it since, and I hope I never will again. Didn't stop me from night wandering, though. When I was a kid, I had a remote-controlled boat. I was playing with it in the river one cold winter day, and batteries died. I, being 11 years old, jumped in after it with all my clothes and shoes on. Fortunately, I was a very good swimmer, but hitting that water took my breath away. I made it out to the boat and realized I couldn't hardly breathe or move. I seriously thought I was going to die. I managed to tread water, still stupidly grasping my boat, and essentially prepared for death. Thankfully, I was swept through a tighter area where the water flowed very fast, and the river basically flung me into a houseboat, and I was able to pull myself up onto the back of it. I laid on the floor and cried for a while, then took my freezing ass home where I washed and dried my clothes so my abusive uncle wouldn't find out. I was 19, living alone. It was the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 a.m., and I was starting a new job the next day, so I was trying to get some sleep, obviously. Someone comes banging on my door, throwing their whole fucking body weight behind it. Now, I'm butt-ass naked and not about to get out of bed because I have no idea who's behind that door, and I was a 19-year-old female living by herself. Some dude comes in, sits down in my living room chair, and I mustered up every ounce of courage to ask, "Who are you?" Dude told me his name, but I definitely didn't remember this. "Why are you here?" I asked, and he slurred, "Oh, this isn't so-and-so's house?" "No," dude was super apologetic and stumbled his ass out of my apartment, but I was getting shook. I didn't have a phone at that point, and my car was in the shop, so I was basically shit out of luck for getting away. My landlord was like, "Why didn't you go to the cops?" Like hell, a 19-year-old girl was going to go out at effing 2 a.m. to walk to the effing police station after someone just broke into her fucking house. I rigged something up to lock the door and try to get some sleep. I don't think I slept even a second. This is something I've never once told either of my parents, and that was like 25 years ago. Looking back on it now, I'm wondering who the thinks, "Oh, this door is locked, I guess I'll break it down," instead of, calling someone or knocking. The dude was obviously drunk, and I was lucky nothing more came of it, but Jesus Christ. Even if that was my friend, I'd be so pissed that he broke down my door. What the hell? My dad strangling me in the back of his car. I screamed and begged for my stepmom to help me. She looked at me with the coldest expression imaginable. I knew she hated me. I didn't know she hated me that much. She saw the look of genuine terror in a child's eyes and did nothing. I got away from him, ran into the gas station and called the cops. I locked myself in a bathroom. Cops came. They lied, all of them. They made my siblings lie, so I'd look crazy. My dad barely left a mark, so the cops didn't believe me. They tricked me. They told me my parents were going to drive me to a safe place. I could talk about it. They just took me home. The only person who treated me with any sort of kindness that day was the store clerk. She knew I was terrified. She saw the bruises. She heard the cries. My family and the cops didn't. They loved to pretend it never happened, but I will never forgive them. I was getting groceries out of my trunk while it was raining. I hear a hiss of, "You better stop breaking into my house." I turned around and about 5 inches from my face was a knife. Holding it was my upstairs neighbor, who was schizophrenic and off her meds. She jabbed at me. I ducked and quickly put my umbrella between us. She slashed that thing to pieces as I was trying to back my way into the building. Thankfully, my neighbor saw and called 911, and they were super close. The poor woman was convinced I'd broken into her place, stealing things. She told the cops she had ghosts, and they said she'd have a massive hole in her wall. She was gone for a while. I was still scared of her when she got back, as she wasn't a nice person anyway, but oh my god, when she was off her medication, everyone was on high alert. I was living in Guatemala for a few months with a local family while learning Spanish. I was walking home from the pub one night, and my host family's house was the opposite direction to my friends. and a bit further out of town, so I was by myself with no one around. There were street dogs everywhere who never really approached or paid attention to people during the day. Apparently night was a different story. There was a pack of them barking. I continued walking as normal and they surrounded me in seconds. 18 to 20 dogs, all barking like crazy. The alpha of the pack was aggressively biting at my legs and 2 others started to snap and bite too. The rest surrounded me, barking. I was screaming at the top of my lungs at the dogs. It made no difference. I had nothing on me to fight them off. Fighting every instinct to just effing run, knowing they could outrun me easily, and it would trigger them to chase. Continued my brisk walk, convinced I was about to get mauled and eaten. Then, one of them stood on my flip-flop and it fell off. Made the split-second decision to stop, bend down and grab it, because the street was so full of jagged, rocky areas and debris that I knew I couldn't go barefoot, and that stumbling along would show progress and weakness. This move was what saved me. As soon as I bent down to the floor, they all backed off. My host family later told me that locals will pick up rocks to throw at the dogs if they get attacked like this. So even though there were no big loose rocks around me, the dogs assumed that's what I was doing and backed off. They followed me a few more minutes from a distance, barking, then ran off down another street. Thank God I was wearing flowy cotton pants and not shorts. I got home and my pants were ripped to shreds, but no actual skin was broken. From that day onward, I carried a large rock with me anytime I walked alone at night there. TLDR. Got attacked by a pack of 20 street dogs in the middle of the night in Guatemala. Being unarmed in the middle of a shootout. Backstory context. I come from a previous career where it was expected. I went in every night mentally prepared for near-death or death itself experiences. After 7.5 years, I hung it up. The anxiety was too much, got tired of it, followed a new path. Well, I usually conceal carry. However, as of late, I've been rather lazy with it, complaining about the bulk of it, or it's too hot, or just run out the door and forget. Nonetheless, about 3 nights ago, I was within maybe 20 yards of a large group of teens, young 20s crowd. Not involved with them at all, just close by. And out of nowhere, bang, 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 bang. 15 to 16 rapid shots, treating gunfire. Immediately heart stopped. I hit the floor, and my first thought was, God damn it, I don't have a gun. And in that moment, every single thought of, what if I get hit with a stray? What if they come this way? What if it's an active shooter? Just raced through my mind. Even through my previous career, I'd never been struck with fear that quick, that sudden before. And I've been in active shootouts where someone was physically shooting at me. Long story short, it was gang-related. Someone got hit, they all ran off. Police picked up 6 of them down the block. Haven't slept right since. When I drove a semi-OTR, I was in the sleeper, just about to fall asleep. I heard my co-driver cough really hard. Then the truck started shaking violently for about 10 seconds. Then it came to a stop. He passed out and drove off the road on I-10 near Quartzsite, Arizona. A cactus went through the windshield and went straight through the passenger seat. If I'd stayed awake any longer, I'd be dead. If he went off the road any sooner or later, the truck would have rolled. He wakes up. I tell him to get out. He opens the door, and a boulder had punctured one of the 100-gallon tanks. Diesel fuel all over the 110-degree desert. The DOT shows up to investigate and said we're lucky to be alive. The company I worked for wanted me to continue driving with him. I said not a fucking chance. I don't get in a car with anyone anymore unless I'm the one driving. Maybe not quite as terrifying as some of the others here, but it still sticks out to me. I was driving my family home after visiting my grandparents for Christmas, upstate New York, about a 2-hour drive that was only partially on interstate highway. Husband and 3 kids in the Jeep with me. The weather was clear when we set out. Then it started to rain lightly, just a little, as we neared the end of the interstate portion of the drive and had to switch to much smaller winding roads. Everything was still fine. Until we left one town, and it suddenly started slushing, big fat globs of slush coming down instead of light rain. The road was suddenly slick, and as I came around a bend into a winding road, I lost control of the Jeep. Couldn't quite get it back into control, and I saw a minivan coming toward us in the oncoming lane, and had to make a split decision between hitting the van head-on or hitting the guardrail, and hoping we didn't end up in the small ravine on either side of it. I aimed for the guardrail. Luckily, it held, but we did do a full 360, possibly twice, before coming to a stop with our front bumper on the road somewhere behind us. My husband tells me I screamed. The Jeep's front end was mangled, but we managed to limp it to a gas station where we could wait for a family friend to come pick us up, the kids and me, and where my husband could wait for a tow truck. We were able to mostly fix the Jeep, but I still got tense when driving past that point for the next 2 years before we moved. When I was about 13 in the early 90s, my friend went to a bookstore where if you reached over the top of one shelf, you could grab a P magazine from the other side. My friend apparently did this, and without looking at what he grabbed, he stuffed the magazine in his coat and we left. We went back to my house and he pulled out the stolen magazine. Blacktail. I'm the whitest white kid in the whitest rural town in Pennsylvania, and have a Blacktail magazine. He stays the night at my place because that's what we did all the time back then. In the morning, we're riding to school, and he suddenly looks at me and says he forgot the magazine. I ask, you forgot it where? On the magazine rack in your bathroom. My mom is a stay-at-home mom, and she is there all day. I spent the next 8 hours in a terrified panic about what's going to happen when my mother finds the magazine. Worst day of my life. I come home at the end of the day, she's acting normal, and the magazine is still sitting right there on top of the magazine stack, untouched. She never found it. I'm a pretty confident swimmer. One of my buddies had just acquired a sailboat and was learning how to sail. He'd only been at it for a month or 2. We're out in the Hudson River in the middle, where each shore is a little less than a mile away. I decide I'm going to jump in and swim around. He warns me not to, but I got this. I jump off the boat. It whizzes by me at like 20 miles per hour, and suddenly I'm being rocked by currents going every direction you can think. Okay, I got this. I'll swim. Why is it so hard to swim? I'm sweating. This is rough water. I look to either shore. Nope, not swimming to those. I feel the complete lack of bottom underneath me. The sensation was like falling with nothing to grab onto. I decide to float on my back, but the water is splashing over my face and up my nose and in my mouth. I scream, "You gotta come back," as I see them off in the distance, scrambling to figure out how to turn around and aim for me. That's the moment I just reserved myself to my fate. I'm about to fucking die here. It was about 5 minutes of just intense panic, fighting my attempts to calm myself down, sweating and struggling in the water. Before an inner tube smacks me in the face, I grab on and get pulled along with the boat still clipping through the water. Horrifying stuff. Stupidity at its finest. Above my door there's a kind of window. I don't really know how to describe it, but when I was a kid, I could hear loud banging noises and I could see a light flashing in side to side. I thought there was someone breaking in and that I was about to die. I mustered up all my courage to go to my mom's room and woke her up. I eventually got too scared and jumped over to my bed so my feet wouldn't make noise. It was even louder, I know, but dumb. Eventually my brother came home and I ran to him crying, telling him there was someone breaking in. He was confused and asked me more questions. We could hear my mom getting angry and telling us to turn off the lights. She can't sleep with any kind of light on. She eventually got so mad she stormed out of the room and turned the light off herself. She was tired, so she couldn't see my tears and just went back to bed. I felt safer with my brother home as well, so we all went back to bed. The next day I told my mom everything. She was apologizing a lot for getting mad. Then came the big reveal. I told her about the lights and the noises. She burst out laughing and I was confused. Apparently, she was being kept awake by a mosquito in her room, so she took out her phone and turned on the flashlight. So me crying and fearing for my life was all because of some damned mosquito. I was taking the garbage out one night and saw a man crouched down next to a tree in my yard. He had a gun and clearly looked like he was hiding from someone. I was absolutely terrified, but my brain decided the best course of action was not to show fear. So I walked right past him and continued taking out the garbage like it was no big deal. I have no clue how I managed to be so casual about it, but the moment I got back inside I was definitely full of nerves. I told my wife what I saw. We both went to the window to see where the guy was, and we immediately heard 2 shots ring out. From there, we grabbed our infant daughter and belly crawled back to our room to call 911. Unfortunately, no one came to help. That's because the guy was already running from the cops. Apparently, the police were in the woods just across the street looking for him. I didn't see them at the time, but they did eventually make their way to our yard and caught him. Sadly, this was not the first time we had someone fire a gun in front of our house, nor was it the last time we had police brandishing rifles on our property while a helicopter hovered overhead. It was not a great neighborhood. Since we delivered newspapers to people before they woke up, but it was my family, me, my 2 siblings, and my mom. We were trying to get the most coverage, so they dropped me off at one end of the route, and I worked the area. But not just 10 minutes after they left me on the street, I was walking and heard the loudest blood-boiling scream ever, and I stood there frozen for probably 10 minutes. But it felt like an eternity. I never found out what it was, but man, was I horrified after that point, and I was already terrified of being out in the night and that early. Another part, this wasn't me, but my sister. It was Halloween and she went up to a house with some lights up and decorations where she saw something human-like sitting on the porch, probably like 4 to 5 feet away from her, crisscross looking away from her. She came back to the car crying because she was so terrified. Needless to say, that paper route had some terrifying moments.